welcome everyone this morning to a different kind of Easter service. This week obviously has been a tragic week for our church family. Last Sunday morning, Kaitlin Gerber was shot and killed. She was here the day that we founded Whispering Winds Church, and she was a regular attender from that day forward. But Kaitlin was more than just a member of this church. She was a friend, she was a youth group member, she was a co-worker, she was a chaperone, she was our kids' babysitter, she was a praise team member, she was a missionary, she was a dinner theater waitstaff leader, she hosted, she waited tables, and she did so much more. Things change when the tragic situation involves a friend. The cliches we throw out when someone else faces a tragedy seem pretty empty when they're thrown back at us. You've probably heard them yourselves this week. Oh, you'll get through it. God will guide you. Just put your trust in God and everything will be fine. God will use this for something good. You just need to wait and see. And we all know the spirit in which they're intended. We've probably said the same things ourselves. But it's like putting a Band-Aid on a broken arm. Doesn't do a whole lot when your heart is broken. Last Saturday morning, we got the news that Karen's grandfather had passed away. He was 92 years old. He was an amazing man, and he lived a wonderful life. I was blessed just to have known him. But you know what? He lived a full life. The passing of Karen's grandfather is very sad, but tragic is not a word I would use to describe it. It's entirely different what we then experienced the next day. Karen and I received a few phone calls right after church, but we couldn't verify anything that we'd heard. We used 2 computers to keep up, plus our phone, trying to figure out what was going on if what we were hearing was true. And then the text messages, the emails, and eventually the posts on Facebook started pouring in. It was true. Our friend Kaitlin was gone. That is the definition of a tragedy. I put this in the category of what happened in Newtown, Connecticut before Christmas. Many of the same questions we asked then are being asked now. Why would God allow something like this to happen? Why couldn't God stop it? And this is probably the hardest part to handle from a human perspective. It's easy to blame God. I can process this in my brain, but rarely does it make my heart feel better. The fact is, I believe in a God who allows us to make choices. We are given freedom. We're given the freedom to accept Christ or reject him. Jesus himself says this in Matthew 7:13 and 14. Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. Not everyone makes the right decision, and Jesus knew that. We are given a freedom to do right and to do wrong. We're given the freedom to take one drink too many at the bar and then step into a car and become a drunk driver. We're given the freedom to abuse power, abuse money, abuse drugs. But if God steps in every time we choose to do wrong, are we really free? I can follow that through logically, and I do believe that God did not cause what happened last Sunday. But that doesn't fix our broken hearts. It doesn't heal the wounds of guilt as we think about those times she told us of what was going to happen. She warned us. She knew. In order for us to get to the point of healing, we have to find a sense of peace. And as the week progressed, I finally began to find a sense of peace in a couple of different places. The first came in all the avalanches of Facebook posts, emails, phone calls from people who were touched by Kaitlin. I had no idea that she had such a large sphere of influence. I began to read how people not only knew her, they were changed by her. I began to realize that though 20 years isn't very long, Kaitlin managed to pack a lot of joy in a small amount of time. I experienced that joy as I worked with her in children's ministry. No matter the project, no matter the curriculum, she was always ready and excited about it, even when I wasn't. She loved the children, and she was perfectly happy to be with them, teaching Bible stories and leading in games. So there was a little bit of peace knowing that she brought joy to so many. But the other place I found peace came a little more slowly, and I'm still working on it. And it began at Karen's grandfather's funeral on Tuesday in Indiana. Riley was in tears. She was being held by her grandmother, and she was looking down at her papa and lying in the casket. And someone came up and said they thought that, well, Riley must be very tired. And I said, no, it's much more than that. And it was like Riley looking down at her papa's body. The light suddenly came on. Caitlin's not coming back, is she? Riley sobbed, and I sobbed too. And another time during that same day, I was holding Kerrigan as she looked down at her papa. And she looked at me and she said, "Papa's sleeping. Get up, Papa, get up." And yesterday at the funeral, anybody who was close to Kerrigan saw her standing and pointing at Kaitlin. And over saying, "Caitlin's sleeping." And then Karen would say, "Where is Kaitlin?" And little Kerrigan pointed up and said, "With Jesus." In those few words, Kerrigan described what the Bible says about what it means to die. One of my favorite Bible stories from Sunday school is when Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. And in John 11:11, it says, after he said this, he went to tell them, this is Jesus speaking, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I'm going there to wake him up." Kerrigan and Kaitlin. Kerrigan said Kaitlin was sleeping. But she also said Kaitlin is with Jesus. With Jesus. She described two very biblical concepts. Kerrigan said Kaitlin was with Jesus. That implies relationship. But it also means that death didn't change that relationship. And if you're a believer, the same thing is true for you. Kaitlin was with Jesus before she ever left this earth. Kaitlin is still with Jesus. And if you believe that Jesus is with us, that implies a deep and abiding relationship. If you're a believer, the same is true for you. Jesus is with us. He suffers with us. He feels this tragedy with us. Jesus walked on this earth. He faced suffering. He faced tragedy. And he walks this road that we're facing right now with us. The cross was an ugly instrument of torture, of shame, and of death. But when Christ died with us, it transformed. Suddenly the same ugly cross was made beautiful by the powerful hand of God. This tragedy is ugly. It is filled with suffering and pain for those left behind. But Jesus, through the power of the cross, can transform that ugliness. And today we can decide what to do with that ugliness. We can live in the valley of shadow of death forever if we want. We can stay bitter, stay angry. I know right now that's what I want to do. I admit it. Or we can decide to live our lives with the hope that Kaitlin held dear. Each of us can't let go and let God. But the question is, what will we do? And again, I'm including myself in this. We were talking at the restaurant on Friday, and I said, this is very hard because I've had to separate the two parts of me. The part that's supposed to be the pastor and the part that's a friend. And sometimes I want to live where I'm the friend and not the pastor, so I can just be angry, be bitter, and not let go of that. But Kaitlin wouldn't want that. I know that. And in our own way, each of us can experience transformation. Maybe you don't know Jesus as Kaitlin knew Jesus. I remember when she came to Christ and she was so excited. And it really did. It changed her life. And maybe the only Jesus you've ever known is Kaitlin, because he's shown through her. She obviously exhibited the joy of Jesus in everything she did. It is a joy that every one of us can experience. It's a joy that changes you. It's a joy that opens your eyes to the one who walks with you, who stands with you, who suffers with you. Jesus is here with us today. He's suffering with us. Today, we have an ugly cross, a couple of 2x4s and a bunch of holes in it. Bryce and I spent a long time working on it last year. And right now, I'm going to have the opportunity to transform this cross. I'm going to end with the words that I posted almost immediately after this happened. Kaitlin was an angel before she ever left Earth. And now I suspect there are angels in the corner of heaven where things are a little brighter with the radiance of the new angel in their midst. I am so glad we had the opportunity to experience her radiance here on Earth. My heart is broken even more when I see how many people were affected by her. She touched so many people. But one thing we do know that we can depend on is that Kaitlin is among the angels, and we will see her again. Oh, I need you right now. There is transformation in simply knowing that Kaitlin is in a place where there is no fear. 1 Corinthians 15, 54 and 55 says, "When the perishable has been clothed with the imperishable, and the mortal with immortality, then the saying that is written will come true. Death has been swallowed up in victory. Where, O death, is your victory? Where, O death, is your sting?